Steph Curry went night-night on the Knicks and the fan base after another legendary night at the Garden. So let's bring in our New York Post sports columnist, Mike Vaccaro, to get his thoughts on the Knicks' 114-102 loss against the Warriors. Mike, you were in attendance. Before we start talking about the game and the X's and O's, what was that atmosphere like at the Garden with Chef Curry in the building?
Yeah, it was electric. And, for one of the few times all year, Brandon, it wasn't a universally Knicks crowd. A lot of Warriors fans in the building, probably specifically a lot of Steph fans in the building. But especially this year, you really haven't gotten a lot of foreign invasions, if you will, from opposing teams. And last night was different. I won't say it was 50-50, but it was 70-30. I mean, there was a sizable number of Warriors fans, which tells you of the appeal of the team, but more specifically of Steph Curry, who was equal to the task last night. One of the great visiting players to ever come to the Garden, and he always seems to manage to do something special. 12-1 there now in his career.
All right, so we got the environment all set. Now let's get into the nitty and gritty and the X's and O's. No Karl-Anthony Towns on the night because of personal reasons. But Tom Thibodeau, post-game, said that we have to find a way to win that game. Good win for the Warriors or bad loss for the Knicks?
But I think it's more a good win for the Warriors. The Warriors really needed the win more. Look, I mean, I'm not going to minimize any games the Knicks win. They have to do tend to their own business. But obviously, the Warriors are trying to get out of the play-in, and they've been playing better lately ever since they got Jimmy Butler. It wasn't a terrible loss for the Knicks. They've had worse losses than this. It's another game on national TV where they kind of laid an egg, and that's a concern since that's how almost all the playoff games are. And they didn't play their best. But look, I mean, you can't just take a guy like Karl-Anthony Towns and his 24 and 14 and expect just anybody to step in and fill that. And I think that was a real issue last night. It's going to be an issue for as long as he's out. It was wonderful to see Mitch Robinson back, but he's limited. He played 15 minutes. That's about the cap of what you'll see with him, for the foreseeable future. And it's tough. I mean, the Knicks are designed to have their full team to be able to be successful, and they didn't have their full team last night. Not an excuse; it's the truth. And look, very few teams this point of the year aren't going through an injury here and there, so you have to deal with it. And Thibodeau's right; they really should have won the game. I mean, they were up by 10. They were in control of the game early in the third quarter, and then they just stopped guarding people. And it's a continuing lesson when the Knicks want to guard people. It's obvious. You can see it on the floor, and you can see it in the results. And last night there were 4 or 5 wide open jumpers that just no Nick rotated over, and that's a troubling and a chronic concern for this team.
Strong night by OG. 42 minutes, 29 points. Jalen Brunson added 25. Everyone was excited to see Jalen Brunson versus Steph Curry. Curry, 12-1 at the Guard now. You've seen some of the best basketball players of all time play against the Knicks at that arena. What's Curry's legacy like now at the Guard?
Well, obviously, there's always going to be the forever what if about, back in the draft when he came out, he went 7th to the Warriors. The Knicks had the 8th pick and desperately wanted to pick him. Didn't think the Warriors were going to. And, you never can just easily predict the way history will be altered. But, Steph on the Knicks all these years might have made things a little bit different at the Garden. Look, I mean, he's up there with all of the great visiting players that have ever come in and seem to have saved their best for New York. I mean, LeBron has been that way. Jordan was that way. Kareem was that way. Of course, that was a homecoming for him. You can go all the way back to George Mikan, who appeared by himself on the Garden marquee back in the old days when the Knicks were trying to sell tickets. And they didn't sell tickets to play the Minneapolis Lakers. They sold tickets to play against George Mikan. And that's a long tradition of opponents who have come in and saved their very best for the Garden. It's even most opposing players will call it the Mecca of basketball, and it's a place that means a lot to basketball players in a city that means a lot to basketball players. So, Steph's just one of a long list of great opponents who have come in and been at their best at the Garden regularly, and he certainly has been.
All right, let's look ahead a little bit because the Knicks are going to be playing away from the Mecca until at least around St. Patrick's Day. Right now, they're currently 40-21. They head out to the West Coast for a 5-game road trip. Mike, what are you watching for during this trip? Like, what would be a successful road trip for this Knicks team?
I mean, to me, honestly, if they could come back 2-3, I think it's time for it right now. It's a tough road trip. You don't know if Cat's going to be available or when he's going to be available. And look, I mean, you just don't want to get into a position now at this point of the year where you're losing 5, 6 in a row. And they do have one entirely winnable game, you would think, in Portland, although they've been playing better in the second half of the year. They already beat the Kings. Obviously have a tough back-to-back coming right away in the two Los Angeles teams. But more than that, you just want to see them continue to play better. Right now the Knicks aren't locked into the three, but they're fairly well ensconced in the three. And even if they move to the four, you could argue that being in the 4-5 series might actually be beneficial to them down the road if you believe they match up better with the Cavaliers than they do with the Celtics. But that's all speculation. But you just don't want to see them take too many steps back, even especially if Cat can't play for a number of games on this trip. You want to see them be able to adjust and at least bring home a couple of wins. You would hate them to come home 1-4, 0-5, and then all of a sudden you have a lot of other questions to add to the Knicks as they enter the home stretch of the season.
Mike, you talked about them not being locked in that 3 seed. Is it Eastern Conference Finals or bust for this year's Knicks squad?
Well, certainly we would have said that in October, and I think that on one level you have to say that. Look, the last 2 years they've won a series. That's progress. Both years they ran into a buzzsaw in the second round. Both times with home court advantage, by the way. And so, there's definitely a sense that at some point you have to keep moving up the pyramid. What we've seen this year is that the Cavaliers and the Celtics are both tough matchups. Yes, I think you still have to consider that to be a definite goal for the Knicks, is trying to get one more round in at least. But it's not I don't think it would be a total calamity if they play a tough series against one of those teams, but certainly it would be a little disappointing given the expectations around this team and certainly where we thought they were going to be at the start of the season.
Mike Vaccaro, thanks for your time.